Why, Kenny? Why? That is the question we have to ask. We have appearances from Don Callis as well. We get some words from Sting, and we figure out the fate of the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Does MJF retain his precious weapon, or does it go to Orange Cassidy? That is something that we find out. What did you think overall on this episode of Dynamite this week? Coming off of last week with so much newsworthy stuff, this week being just as packed with newsworthy stuff as well.
I thought that this week's Dynamite was absolutely fantastic. I think that they've done a really good job at developing some of the, not just developing the seeds that were planted, because winter is coming, obviously, I think wrapped up some stories, but I think it also really planted some seeds. And I thought that this was a very, very fine continuation. I really liked a lot about the show. Actually, there wasn't a lot I didn't like about the show. And the very worst thing about the show was inoffensive. So I just thought it was a really, really fun show. And like you said, it really was noteworthy for a lot of reasons that I'm sure we're going to get into here.
Yeah, here, just scrolling my notes, I usually highlight, I usually bold any at the beginning of every segment. I have way more bolded headers than I normally have for a show like this, because they just had so many segments. They had something coming in and out of just about every single commercial that wasn't during a match. Plus some had like two things going out of commercial as well. So man, they just packed the stuff in here. And even so, we had some decent matches, but tons and tons of storyline moved along as well. Just like last week when, you know, even just the battle royale was so story heavy as well. We just talked, you know, for 15 minutes just covering the battle royale and all the little story implications out of
it. Yeah, I actually totally agree. I know that I was not on the show here for a few weeks, but the battle royale actually was one of my. It's not that it was spectacular, but there were a lot of those little story implications that I really like to see in a battle royale. A lot of and sometimes even storylines kind of crisscrossing a little bit. So I had that of note as well from Winter is Coming, that the battle royale was just completely littered with fun little story developments just here and there, and I thought that was a lot of fun.
All right, so let's introduce the show here. You're watching and listening to That's Wrestling. If you're listening to this as a podcast, we do this show live over on YouTube, and if you had subscribed and hit the little bell notification, you would have been... I'm knocking stuff over. You would have been alerted that we moved the show start time this week just because of how everything worked out, and of course, Trey and I went way long on New Japan. We just finished that up after talking 2 hours of New Japan. So,
hey, listen, yeah. New Japan goes long on New Japan, so you guys are allowed.
Yeah, I mean, we cranked out like 4 episodes worth of coverage. So, if you want to send any comments, questions, feedback, you can drop those in the comment section of the YouTube video, or you can send those to Eric at that'swrestling.com. You can come hang out with us on Discord. The link is in the show notes. Also, we have t-shirts. If you are really interested, the link is in the show notes, but you can find those at teespring.com/store/that'swrestling. I'm actually wearing one right now. It's kind of a little formula with a hat, ring equals TW, that'swrestling.com. It's actually pretty cool. Sparky does so good with all of our graphics. Big shout out to him doing all of our stuff, and hopefully we'll be sending some other stuff his way as well. And drop a review on all your favorite podcast apps for the show. It really helps out, and I think that covers most of the... follow us on Twitter. That's Wrestling1, the number 1, because Caleb's gonna start posting more, I hope.
Well, I've also noticed that I think you're posting as well on there, so I didn't want to step on your toes too much.
I think I only post pretty much. I think only the show gets to end up posting for me. I think I might post once in a while, but not very often.
Okay.
All right, so with me tonight I have back Caleb Johnson after moving hopefully everything is all kind of settled down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is. My schedule is pretty wide open now. I think many of the viewers will know that I had a bit of a move cross country, but I'm pretty much all settled in at my new temporary location down in Virginia. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be back on the show and watching and reviewing some AEW Dynamite.
All right, and if you're watching this on YouTube, we're a little wary of his current internet situation, so that is why you just have a still picture of him and you don't get to see the video.
Yep, that's the only good selfie of me that I took on a plane 4 years ago. So if I get better internet, then you'll be back to seeing my smiling face.
All right, so we start off the night with the Young Bucks versus TH2. And TH2 attack before the bell, but the Bucks take control immediately. This match just had a lot of high speed, high flying action. Bucks were in control the majority of this match, though. Jack Evans did get a little bit of offense in, Angelico and Jack Evans did. At one point, Jack Evans got thrown into the crowd and onto the Acclaim, who were sitting ringside off of a sunset bomb, and TH2 got the heat on Matt Jackson for a little while. Later, Jack Evans is given a doomsday device on the ramp, and Matt did continue to sell his leg injury in this match, and Helico worked the leg submission, though I'm totally spacing on what it was called. Something the Deathlock? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like, I thought he said Peruvian, and I don't think that was it.
I think it was like the Rowan Deathlock or something. I don't know.
It was actually a really neat submission where he had him kind of like you could tell he was prepping for a submission, and then just jumped in the air and flipped over and landed in a submission pose. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I've seen him do that before, but I definitely took note of it this week. Looked pretty cool.
The Bucks gave then Jack Evans an indie taker on the floor, so he has taken a lot of punishment. He gets thrown into the crowd. He gets hit with a doomsday device on the ramp. Here he gets hit with an indie taker on the floor, and then we get a BT trigger on Angelico for the win. After the match, the Acclaim hopped the barricade, but before they could even get in the ring, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels run out to make the save, and then we get the match made for next week. It's going to be Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels versus the Acclaimed. So, interesting way they're going this route. Obviously, the Acclaim have an issue with the Bucks, but SCU kind of stepping in and kind of blocking that bullet from these guys.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about this match, this is just me. Maybe I'm overthinking some things, but AEW, we've talked about this in the past. AEW is a relatively young company. We're working on year 2 here. And sometimes I just feel like certain teams should not be getting as much as they are. Not just teams, but wrestlers in general. I think certain matches should be going a little bit shorter because you need to establish who your top stars are. And in this match, I just felt like perhaps we could have done with a little less time. I thought it was a really fun, high-flying match, like you mentioned. But maybe could be doing with a little less time here. I know the Young Bucks are very giving. I mean, my understanding is that backstage and in a non-kayfabe environment, that the Bucks are really willing to work with young guys, want to put young guys over, and give them the shine. But it's just this weird duality where you're trying to make new stars, but you're also trying to establish who your stars are in the first place. And coming, fairly recently off their win over FTR, I just thought the Bucks should have taken a little less here. And but I mean, a minor complaint. A lot of fun. I like the storyline implications, and I do like on the flip side, I do really like that AEW puts a lot of new younger tag teams in there with experienced guys, similar to Top Flight and the Young Bucks, and now the Acclaim and SCU. I like them really passing on that new or passing on information to the new guys.
Yeah, that's kind of like a double-edged sword, at least with this particular team of having TH2 out there. It would have made more sense if they put a different team in the spot, but it depends where they're going with this. If TH2 are going to be jumping up the card a bit. I've always thought that TH2 is being underutilized, but they're just not clicking for some reason. The two of them, Angelico and Jack Evans, are amazing wrestlers, and I was super excited when it was originally announced that Angelico and Jack Evans were going to be in AEW, and then they just kind of have fizzled. They haven't really gone up or down. They just kind of stay the same, and I think that's a bit of a shame. And like I actually kind of thought slightly the opposite. I thought that the TH2 didn't get enough, but it's like they can't decide what to do with them. Are they just going to be jobbers, or are they going to be players? And if they're going to be players, you need to give them more. But if they're just going to be jobbers, then you give them less. But they I don't know. They just they fall out of the gate every time.
Right. You know what, actually, I think, and in my opinion, I did like this match. So like, I did think that TH2 looks good. I like Angelico, Jack Evans, just like you said. Like you also said, I think that maybe something's not clicking. But one thing of note, I know it's minor, but I really like the changing gear as well. They used to look like inflatable balloon men that used to be part of Bayley's entrance in WWE, and they look like they've got a little more edge now, and you can in a sense tell them apart a little bit more. They're really bringing out their own characters, so I do think that they should be players. But as I said, I just personally feel like with such a young company as AEW, you need to take a year or two and really establish your stars before you start trying to make new guys. And it feels like AEW is constantly caught between, hey, we need a wider audience to know who the top players are, and then, but we also want to try to put over new people.
Yeah, I mean, if they had started earlier, obviously it would have been easier to establish TH2. Angelico was huge on the indie scene already. Jack Evans, of course, making his name down in Mexico. So they weren't like completely newbies, but yeah, I don't know. They just did not click as well. But I do have to agree with as far as the ring gear goes. I believe Angelico was not wearing a shirt this time. That he used to wear like a full long sleeve compression shirt that was like highlighter green. So I did notice that, and his pants weren't nearly as bright, and I think Jack Evans wore completely black pants. So I think their look is starting to get a little better. I could not take them seriously when they looked like highlighters running around. I think they look a lot better now.
Yeah, they used to look like Sharpie markers, and I like it a lot better.
All right, we move on. There's just a very quick backstage segment with MJF. Basically, he says he hates Orange Cassidy's shtick. He's going to make a lot of marks very angry. He's going to beat the crap out of Orange Cassidy. He's going to bury him and retain his diamond ring because I'm better than you, and you know it.
Yeah, I think that in AEW, well, I mean, obviously we're speaking about AEW, but I think in recent times, I think a little bit of the shtick is going away with Orange Cassidy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I just feel like he's not doing that as much. I think obviously it plays better to a crowd, so I'm sure it'll change once we get full crowds back, if and when that happens. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that Orange Cassidy has been doing a whole lot of normal wrestling lately. But that's fine. Good promo, good MJF. He's intense. I like it.
Yeah, well, it's the hypocritical heel. A lot of his words ring hollow these days. And that's kind of he would be the PR guy who spins the news. And in this case, he's just spinning the news, I think, for the most part, spinning Orange Cassidy. Next up, we have a short Darby Allin video. He is the typical film noir type style. He is sitting across a table from a guy who gives him a Rorschach test, but the images are pretty clearly people. The first one being Ricky Starks. He says wolf in sheep's clothing. Then the next one is Hobbs. He says snake in the grass. And the next one is Cage. He says a puppet. I also see the number one contender. the same man that ever since making his debut has tried to end my career. You can say this has been going on for 6 months, but in reality, it's been 7 years because I've been dealing with shit like this from people like this all my life. He's beaten me, but never alone. But now I want to give him the opportunity to do so. Brian Cage, Darby Allin, TNT Championship. This is just a callback as well, scene from when he was standing in front of the firebombed car from a couple weeks ago. And then finally, the guy holds up one last one, and it is the face of Sting. Allin pauses for a second and just smiles, gives a slight little under the breath chuckle, and that is the end of it. So very interesting here. He is challenging Brian Cage for the TNT Championship, and mentioning that you've never beaten me by yourself. And then Sting bringing a smile to his face.
I tell you what, you and I have talked many times about the need for stuff like this on Dynamite, and this really was up my alley. I know that we've also talked a little bit about Darby Allin's vignettes and how some of them are hit, and a few of them kind of like weird skateboarding with Rob Dyrdek or whatever is kind of dumb, I thought. This is a big hit for me. You're right. The only downside of this is that the Rorschach test was like so clearly obvious, but whatever. It was really good, I thought. I thought that the intercut footage with Darby, kind of talking about each of the members of Team Taz was really neat. And the Sting chuckle is just a nice little allusion to where we're going in the future. We get a little bit of that more here we'll talk about in a few minutes. But yeah, man, this just checked all the boxes for me. And I love to see them doing a little bit more of this on primetime television.
Yeah, this was a grand slam in the course of 60 seconds.
That's a good way to put it.
Next up, we have Cody Rhodes, Tony Schiavone, and Arn Anderson are in the ring, and out comes Sting with with the snow as well. I love that they have the little fake snow blowers that make the I forget what they're called. Anyways, it's basically soap sud snow, but it looks like real snow. Arn Anderson has the microphone, and he steps up to Sting, and he just said, "Sorry, I had to get a little closer to make sure this was real." And then he takes his leave. Tony says, like, "Why am I out here?" and gives the mic to Sting, and Sting says, "You serious, Tony? You're just gonna leave? Come here and give me a hug." And they hug. He also talks about how Tony played a big part in his career and says the people love hearing "It's Sting." So, can you give us one of those right now? And Tony grabs the mic and says, "It's Sting." And all the fans chant, "This is awesome." Sting joins in the chant as well. Tony walks back to commentary, and then we have Cody and Sting in the ring, and Cody thanks Sting for the assist, but says he'll get straight to the point. He's been waiting a long, long time to share the ring with him. Sting says that he's not here for him, at least not right now. He says there's something that makes this, he says something makes this place feel, I think I missed a word here. You know what he said?
Yeah, he was saying that it felt familiar to be back on. Right, he said it feels familiar to be back on TNT. Very, very much feels like being home, and then says it feels very, very familiar.
Yeah, and then he points up at Darby, who is sitting up in the upper deck stands.
A la the rafters.
Yes.
Very, very Sting-esque.
He says, "I look around here at ringside, and the animals are the same, but different in a lot of ways. The bottom line is I'm in the jungle, and the Stinger is back in the jungle on TNT once again." Cody says, "Like I said, sir, welcome back." Sting says, "Cody, I know you know everything that goes on around this place, but you know me too. You know what I say. The only thing you know for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure, except this. I am officially signed to AEW, and I plan to be close to the AEW fans and this promotion for a long time. I plan on spending a lot of time here, but the way I choose to play is my business. And then Sting puts his arms around Cody's shoulder and pulls him in close and says, "See you around, kid." And he walks off.
Yeah, this was really good. It was really just a good introduction for Sting in AEW. I had a lot of questions post Winter is Coming on what exactly his role was going to be here. Not a lot of that was answered here, but it seems, just based on the vibe here, that he'll be getting in the ring and doing something. He definitely had a little bit of I like his snide kind of subtle comments. I like how he didn't get in there and just start beef with someone immediately. I think that's something that's kind of contrived in pro wrestling sometimes, when people get into the ring and, or not even just get into the ring, but they'll debut and immediately just for some reason they have to have a feud. So they do something that seems, improbable or unrealistic. And in this case, he really just got in there and you could just tell he had this little bit of attitude with both Cody and Darby, and then left. And you're kind of like, it's more of a subtle seed to what's going to happen. So yeah, I thought it was a good promo. I thought him joining in on the "This is awesome" chant was a little silly. I'm like, come on, Sting, you just got here. You were here last week. You came out silently, like the classic Sting, the icon, the snow. It was just such a cool visual. And then this week he kind of acted like a fanboy. So I thought that, not that it hurt him too much, because I mean, he's Sting, but I wish that he would have been a little bit more business.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, if he stayed a little bit more subtle, it probably would have been good. But yeah, I am still completely confused on what he is going to be doing. We're pretty sure, he should not be taking any bumps at all, because it could break his neck, and that would not be good. So yeah, I really have no idea what he can do around there. Obviously, he can be a mentor to everybody there. Plenty of behind the scenes stuff for him to do. As far as on air, I don't know. Yeah, you're speechless as well.
Yeah, I'm like, I just don't know. We will see. I mean, I like Sting. I've always been a fan, but we'll see. We'll just see where it goes.
Team Taz, they cut backstage and says, "Oh, what a moment we just had," or "What a special moment we just had on Dynamite." Sting being in the ring with Darby Allin sitting in the rafters. But you know what else was special last week? When Cage and Hobbs and Stark beating the crap out of Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin, and then Tony had to hire Sting to save his Golden Boys. Stark then says, "Hey, look at this. Your former star pupil, Hook, has joined the Team Taz Dojo," which is Stark's and Powerhouse Hobbs and Cage. And Taz says it's really simple. His guys are always ready to beat somebody's ass. And Cage says, "Who better?"
Yeah, I mean, good promo. Good. All right, let me just get this out of the way real quick. The Hook thing, that really intrigued me when Cody was in there with Taz, and they had that. I think this was a Dynamite you and I did not review together. And they kind of made it like a little bit of like work shoot style, where Cody came on with his headset and, was like trying to get them to cut the mic and stuff. And, Taz grabbed him and put him in the submission hold. So I thought that was actually really good. And then at the end of that very segment, Hook leaves with his father. And I'm like, the whole, the big diss in that whole segment was that he was training with Cody. So he just decided to change his mind in that moment. And now, once again, he pops up on television with Team Taz, says nothing. And I don't know, I was just a little confused, I guess.
Yeah, they like blew the storyline 2 seconds after it started.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's like let's finish this storyline 2 sentences later. But yeah, Hook being there, yeah, it just kind of moves it along. I'm curious what his kid is like, if he's going to be on the mic anytime soon. I believe his kid is probably going to be somewhere around 22 at this point, because I used to always listen to the Taz morning show. He'd talk about going to his kid's senior high school football games, and that was about 4 years ago when I was listening to it. So I'm guessing he's probably going to be somewhere around 21, 22 at this point. So we will see. Next up, we have the Varsity Blondes, Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison versus FTR. This was pretty much FTR beating the crap out of Pillman for a long, long time. Basic wrestling here. Good old fashioned cheating from FTR. Pulling the ref, getting in the pokes here and there. The guys from New Japan really need to take note on how to cheat effectively and not make the ref look like a total idiot. Because, yeah, I just watched a lot of New Japan that had refs looking like total idiots. Pillman makes a comeback. He hits a springboard shoulder tackle, gets a tag to Griff Garrison. He runs wild over FTR and has a really great offensive sequence, ending in a double spear to both of the guys of FTR. Gets a 2 count there. Pillman tags back in. Griff Garrison is sent to the outside by FTR. Pillman gets hit with a brainbuster, and then he gets hit with the Goodnight Express. FTR get the victory. Post-match, there is a light confrontation with Jurassic Express and FTR. So we might be seeing that match next for FTR.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Actually, that was probably part of my favorite. Well, I should say probably my favorite part of this entire segment was actually the fact when they, backed up there. They backed up into Luchasaurus. It was kind of a good visual there. They were kind of like on the outside up against the barricade, and it was Luchasaurus. And I know Jungle Boy was there, but I mostly just saw
Marco.
What's his name? Marco. And I was like, Marco looks tall, and I think he was standing on a chair.
I think he was probably standing on the bottom rung of the barricade. You know how there's the space? And
yes.
I think he was standing on it.
Yeah. So I thought that was actually pretty funny. I have to say, for the Varsity Blondes, though, I like them, and because I like both of those guys. I didn't realize they were a team. I think that's probably something that's been going on Dark.
Mm-hmm.
But sure, we'll see where it goes. I think they got enough in here that it actually kind of seemed like they took most of the match. Actually, they had quite a bit of offense, but then obviously everyone dies to the Shatter Machine or Goodnight Express, so no problem there. But Griff Garrison actually had a decent hot tag and a really nice double spear. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. I like them, and I definitely like FTR moving into the Jurassic Express feud. That seems pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm curious how Pillman develops as time goes on here. He has not been in the business that long. But he is doing good so far. Griff Garrison has looked good on all of his, he's played the job guy for quite a lot of matches. But over on Dark, he and Pillman have been teaming up. I think the record on the way out said 4-6. So they've lost quite a lot, but they've been teaming for a while. And, this is kind of one of the things that's a real bummer right now, that we don't have the indies. We don't have a relationship with, say, like a New Japan, where you could send these guys over, stick them in like the junior tag league tournament sometime during the year, and basically pound through 11 matches in a couple of weeks to get them just more ring time and all that stuff. I think that's going to be one of the things that we take out of this, pandemic era. How hopefully we're only going to be in it for another 6 to 8 months, and hopefully everything gets back to normal here. But
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's going to be one of the things. A lot of these people, their careers are going to be stunted just because they're not getting the ring time that they would be if they were working, 3 indie shows on the weekends between Dynamite.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I also think that the relationship with because New Japan runs a lot of neat tournaments, and I know we've had a little bit of discussion before, even during our big roundtable a few months ago. We were discussing the idea of tournaments within AEW. And I think that's something that could be used to get these guys a little bit more match time. But specifically, you mentioned the relationship with New Japan. I agree. And it's actually kind of interesting to see in the Super Juniors, you see guys like TJP, and I believe, who's over there? Chris Bay, is he over there right now?
They've been over on New Japan Strong.
Oh, on Strong, right. Okay. So, like, either way, like you said, they are getting more match time by collaborating. And it is something, like you said, banging out 11 matches in just as many days. I think that is something that could benefit some of the folks on the AEW roster. It just seems like we are kind of in a weird political sort of climate between New Japan and AEW.
Yeah, but it also goes with the indies as well, where most of these guys, they'll work Wednesday Dynamite and then they'll take a booking on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They'll run through a weekend loop somewhere. So they'll, usually if they work Dynamite or they work Dark, basically they would work 4 matches a week, which would be a normal schedule, and you are developing as a talent. Working 3 to 4 matches a week. But right now they're working 1 plus whatever training they're doing, which obviously is nowhere near as useful as being in front of a crowd and working that way. Next up, we have Adam Page is in the bar drinking, and Alex Marvez comes to talk to him. He says that Adam Page is scheduled for a 6-man tag next week against Private Party and Matt Hardy, but he is listed as not having any partners at the moment. Page starts off by saying, it's funny you ask. And right when that happens, up from behind the bar, pop up John Silver, Alex Reynolds, wearing Howdy Doody cowboy hats. Think the classic Steve Austin and Kurt Angle skit, where Steve Austin gave a nice cowboy hat to Vince, but a really silly one to Kurt, and Kurt thought it was awesome. I don't know if you've ever seen that skit. That might be a little too old for you.
As a wrestling fan, it's like something you owe to yourself to watch. So even though, as you know, my wrestling fandom only goes back about 5 or 6 years, yes, absolutely I have. And I thought the same thing when they popped up. I was like, look at these little Kurt Angle looking guys.
Alex Reynolds says, "Howdy, cowboy." And Silver says, "I hear you need some partners." And Page says, "How long have you been standing there?" And they look at each other and say, 7 days. Yeah, about 7 days. So this goes back to them getting completely wasted post Dynamite last week with Adam Page. You can see that over on BTE, but they got totally smashed. So they've been passed out behind the bar for the last week. Page says, "You're not my partners. Sorry." They ask who's it's going to be then, and then Page finally relents and says, "Okay, fine, but I'm not joining your group. I'm not doing this thing." And he puts up his hand in the Dark Order little hand gesture, and this is one and done, and that's it. So there we go. We have our Adam Page with Silvers and Reynolds teaming up against Private Party and Matt Hardy. And then we didn't get an answer, though. We haven't heard why is Private Party teaming up with Matt when Matt was such a dick to them during the Battle Royale.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out a little bit about that next week. And also, I don't think he was... I think he eliminated one of them in the Battle Royale, but not the other, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And I wasn't paying quite as much attention, but I think he threw out Mark Quinn and kept Isaiah Cassidy in the match, or vice versa.
Other way around, yes.
Other way around. I knew it. Dang it. So,
but then on BTE, he blamed Mark Quinn for getting eliminated.
Interesting. I didn't see BTE this week.
I didn't either. I just heard the Meltzer summary.
Oh, okay.
And that was one of the things.
Funny. Huh. Well, yeah, I think we will definitely have to find out more about that. As for this segment, just another great man. Alex Reynolds and John Silver are just, in my book, I love them so much. And they're really like surprisingly good in the ring when you see them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just a comedy act. They're effective workers, but again, hilarious. BTE has been their saving grace, honestly. I think that's part of the reason why we see them on Dynamite is because they made such an impact online. And this was perfect. Popping up with the cowboy hats. A really funny, kind of subtle Hangman moment when they said, "Who else is it going to be?" And he just kind of stopped dead and was like, "Fine," because it's so true. He doesn't have any friends, and that's just a carryover from when he said that if he lost the match against Kenny, all he had was the bottle and no friends. So I really, really like where they're going with this. And because, as you and I have talked about, we feel that the grudge match between Hangman and Kenny is a bit further down the road. This is a great thing to have Hangman doing in the meantime, whether he joins, whether he doesn't join the Dark Order. Either way, I'm really entertained by this and everyone involved.
Yeah, and Silver's being on BTE, and did you hear the story about him being ribbed by Tony Khan?
Yes, I think you actually mentioned it to me. Something about how Tony said you need to be putting that kind of enthusiasm to work on Dynamite.
Right. Well, Tony Khan called him into his office and said, "Okay, we have to talk." So, BTE, why aren't you bringing that to the table in Dynamite? So they basically made it sound like he was in trouble, and then he said, "Why are you not doing this on Dynamite?" So pretty funny. And Silvers has one hell of a hot tag as well. He just goes crazy.
Oh, for sure.
Next up, we have the match of Dustin Rhodes with Lee Johnson, who is a new requisition of the Nightmare family, versus 10 of the Dark Order. This match was pretty much not a match. They went back and forth a little bit, and then Dustin just killed 10 with a running bulldog.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see the running bulldog as the finish, but I mean, it's fine. And actually, I think you and I have talked before about how sometimes a non-finishing move, just something that looks good, should finish a match. Like you shouldn't have to say, "Oh, well, no one's hitting finishers yet, so obviously the match isn't over." A match should be able to end at any time. So I do agree with that. I was surprised by it, but retrospectively, I think it was a good idea. But yeah, it was totally fine. Pretty much just an angle.
I was surprised how fast they destroyed Preston Vance. So that was kind of my
right
call out here. After the match, Evil Uno comes out, basically says that Dustin has a 5-decade legacy, and that's a lot of pressure. Uno says that he's only the third most important Rhodes in AEW. He says, "We can help. You should take your rightful place as 7 of the Dark Order," which just was hilarious, given the character of 7 was such a flop. Did you get that reference?
No, I missed that.
Oh, Dustin Rhodes, after leaving WWF when he was Goldust, went to WCW, and he played a character named 7, and it was a disaster.
I did not know that. Now that's a bit of wrestling history I did not know. So that gives this a lot of context.
Yes, so that was a huge disaster. So I like the little inside joke right there. I'm not sure if I'm assuming. I thought somebody else was already 7 anyways. So yes, this was clearly a stab at that character. He says, "It's the right thing." Dustin reaches out like he wants to take the microphone, and then he just slaps the shit out of Uno. Uno falls down, but he tells everybody to stay back and not attack Dustin, and says, "Once Dustin comes to his senses, he'll come running to us." So,
yeah, just another recruitment angle, kind of right after another. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they do. So, and I guess the other one with Hangman was a little less recruitment-y and a little bit more, hey, you need tag team partners.
Especially because in the Battle Royale, it was hilarious when they eliminated, I forget who they eliminated, and John Silver jumped on Adam Page's back and was like celebrating.
He had a great face. He was like, "What are you doing?"
Next up, we have Tony Schiavone is with Brandy Rhodes and Shaquille O'Neal. And Brandy is being a little bitchy because Tony gave Shaq a more lengthy introduction than her, just calling her the chief brand officer. Shaq says that he and Jade's said he saw Jade's interaction with Cody, and he's a fan of Jade. They go back a long way. He loves her, cares about her, and wants to see big things for her, but did not appreciate what she did to Brandy's arm, referring it to being smashed in the chair by Jade 2 weeks ago. And then Brandy says, yeah, well, I didn't really appreciate it either. I didn't deserve that. She came into my house, talked about my family like that, or talked to my family like that. She does it again. I will get up in her face again. And then Shaq says the stuff between him and Cody on Twitter is just Shaq being Shaq and having fun. He says he respects the great wrestlers of AEW. They're the best athletes in the world. Says he likes Cody and Dustin. He liked their father as well and has no problem with them. Shaq says he's looking forward to seeing Jade and Brandy, though, and he'll be at ringside for that. Tony says, I hope that clears everything up, and Brandy gets up to leave, and Shaq has to poke the bear a little bit and says, hey, while your arm is in that sling, you should take some pointers from Jade. And Brandy says, really? You're going to disrespect me again like that? And she calls him an overgrown asshole and throws Tony's drink in Shaq's face. And he gives the best facial expression and spikes the camera while they fade out. I laughed at his freeze frame expression. It was great.
Yeah, I did too, actually. I wasn't sure what to expect with Shaq. But I actually thought this was pretty enjoyable. You were right about Brandy. I was like, he's done, and I'm not even trying to be like, oh, she's a woman. Like, oh, she kind of had this thing where she was like, oh, well, you need to respect me. Put some respect on my name, Tony. And I'm like, to all respect due to you, you just haven't done as many things. Like, Chief Brand Officer is probably the coolest thing you've done. Like, what did you do in WWE that was notable? Like, the next thing out of his mouth, if we're talking about order of what people know you from after Chief Brand Officer, is probably Cody Rhodes' wife. Like, and Shaq has done all these things. So when she got mad at him, I was like, that seems a little unjustified. Like, not that you're not awesome, but Shaq is, an actual celebrity that everyone knows his name. So that seemed a little weird. But the segment itself was actually really good. I thought it was a lot of fun. Shaq, was actually really decent here. And that, you're so right. That last shot of his face, I laughed out loud, like alone in my room, was just cracking up at when he looked at the camera. It made me think of something out of The Office. It really made me laugh.
Yeah, spiking the camera was the cherry on top of that. That was the best. But yeah, it's like, okay, why is Brandy being bitchy to Tony? It doesn't, like, it makes sense if she would be bitchy to Shaq, but it makes no sense for her to be bitchy to Tony.
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like Tony takes everyone's crap. So maybe he's just punching bag, and when people see him, they automatically have to get rude with him. I don't know. Yeah,
Brandy has, she needs to like learn how to stay in her lane. She needs like the little alerts when she's drifting too close to the white line and the yellow line. Like, geez, right. Like, okay, pick a lane. Are you a heel or are you a face? Because you start this off as being a total heel, and then you kind of come out the other end as slightly a face, I guess. But it's like when she came out and took down Jade verbally, that was awesome. That was like 100% babyface. And it's like she can't figure out when the right place is to turn it on and when it's not. And just jumping down Tony's throat made no sense at all. And
it's actually a really good point now that I think about it, because coming out of her previous altercation with Jade, she was 100% babyface, and not only babyface versus heel, but she was also kind of on fire. Like, people were looking at that and were like, you just eviscerated that poor woman. Good for you, Brandy. And now her next like actual televised segment, she's just kicking right off being rude to Tony, which is, and everyone loves Tony. So yeah, you're right. She definitely needs to find where, you know, she lies and make consistent choices.
Right. That's the thing. It always just, yeah, it's like I don't know. She is a natural baby face, but for some reason she wants to be a heel. I don't get it. Next up we have the Inner Circle ultimatum, and they all come out to the ring. Santana is missing. Real life wise, there was a death in his family, so that's why he was not there. But they wrap it up storyline wise in here as well. Jericho says it's a very serious night for the Inner Circle. This could be the last time you see us together in an AEW ring, because as I said 7 days ago, we are here to decide if we're going to build the Inner Circle to be the most powerful group in wrestling. And he says that the shit that's been happening is not what he intended. It's not what he put the group together for, or why he brought MJF and Wardlow into the group. And last week we were just pushing and shoving like petulant children. And he says Sammy hates MJF, Wardlow hates Hager, Ortiz hates all of us. Santana is so mad he didn't even come to work. MJF grabs well, I guess they kind of all had mics, so they didn't have to grab mics from each other. MJF starts talking. He says he loves them all and says that he thinks he might be the issue. He says that people on the internet are saying MJF wants to take over the group, and he says he joined the group because he wanted to be in the greatest faction in wrestling. He addresses Sammy and says that MJF so he addresses Sammy, and basically MJF tries to pass off the throwing in the towel on Sammy. Jericho calls him on his BS. It's like, we established we watched the show. I saw what happened. MJF says, it was a misunderstanding. I had sweat on my brow. Ortiz then pipes in, says, you both would be great for this group, but as people, not so much. Wardlow, you're cool. Stay the same. Stay the way you are. MJF, you're growing on me like a fungus, but you're growing on me. And then he says, Sammy, shake his hand. And he says, Sammy, I get it. Chris chose him. In life, you don't get to choose the hand you're dealt, but you know this is the winning hand. Be the bigger man. You're better than him, and you know it. Shake his hand. Sammy says, all right, Chris, I trust you, but one more thing, and I'm telling you, meaning MJF, and I'm telling you, referring to Jericho, if one more thing happens, I'm quitting the Inner Circle. Jericho says, all right, we all good? And then Jake Hager pipes in, and he says, I got a question. Why is this guy staring at me? And he and Wardlow yell back and forth at each other, saying, why are you staring at me? Why are you staring at me? And then they say, you're creeping me out. You're creeping me out. And Jericho has to say, okay, can we just stop staring at each other? Can we, please? And Jericho says, okay, we're going to continue on as the Inner Circle and build this group up. MJF then cuts in and says that we have a great main event tonight, and I'm going to beat the crap out of Orange Cassidy and get revenge for beating my guy Chris Jericho twice, which was a nice little jab. And Jericho cuts in and says, Max, you're ruining it. And MJF steps back in line. Jericho says, bring it in. They all throw up the middle finger in normally how you do, pile hands on top of each other for like a baseball team or something, but this is a load of middle fingers.
Seriously. I thought this was fun for sure. One of the things that I took out of this, and it's something that like I've noticed about the Inner Circle, but only really right here did I kind of be able to put it into words. One of the things I really like about the Inner Circle is that everyone kind of gets a turn to say not only what they think, but like and this is going to sound so weird when talking about a heel faction, but it's almost like everyone is well represented, and like it's not at all like to each other. They're best friends and they're all like good people. Like Ortiz is, talking about what he thinks. And here's, Sammy saying, well, I'm going to leave if, it was almost so democratic and like organized and polite when you're talking about this nasty villainous heel faction, but everyone's like being really cordial almost. And I do like the fact that it's not just Jericho who, of course you're going to give him a lot of mic time because I mean, he's amazing, but a lot of the other folks within the inner circle get mic time. I mean, every person in the ring spoke in this, 3 or 4 minute segment. So I really like that they kind of spread the love there, and I like to see where this is going. Also, the Hager and Wardlow thing cracked me up. That was my second big belly laugh of the show. This show was actually kind of funny. There were a lot of parts of this show that gave me at least a smile and a few that gave me a real good laugh. And when Hager spoke up, I was like, oh no. And I knew exactly where it was going. And he's like, why does this guy keep looking at me? And then even after their little verbal altercation there, they kind of kept staring at each other real like on the down low. So this really was funny.
Yeah, they both had their body and head facing forward, but it looked like their eyes were staring through their temples. Like they were like shoving their eyes so far to the side to try to see the other guy. It looked like they were looking through their temple at one point. It was hilarious.
Absolutely cracked me up.
Like the two of them, like Hager has always been the low-key hilarious guy. Because I remember way back when Jericho couldn't say the word sorry and Hager just filled it in.
Yes, in a total deadpan sort of.
Yeah, or when they tried to interview Hager and Hager said absolutely nothing and they kept cutting to him just staring at the camera saying nothing. And Wardlow is hilarious on BTE whenever he's on there too. So I see at some point Wardlow being like a huge like babyface at some point.
Oh, 100%.
Next up, we have a really short backstage. Alex Marvez is with FTR. Cash basically says he takes responsibility for losing the championships, and Tully steps in and says, it's really my fault. You shouldn't have to bear that burden yourself. And then Dax says, you can slap a badass bumper sticker on a Dodge Stratus, but it doesn't make it an 82 Ford Bronco, and we're a Ford Bronco. The tag team championships are all that we really care about. Fear the revelation. That's about it.
Yeah, pretty short, pretty easy. But Fear the Revelation, I think they're kind of starting to lean into that a little bit more. So not just FTR, but I'm sure FTR will mean whatever they want it to mean when the time calls for it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise short and like I said, inoffensive, but also didn't do a ton.
No, did not. Next up, we had Lucha Bros and Lance Archer versus Eddie Kingston and Butcher and Blade. And this just breaks out as a giant brawl right away because when Lance Archer comes out, he just hurdles the top rope like it was 6 inches tall into the ring. And Lance Archer goes after Kingston. Phoenix goes after Blade. Butcher works with Penta, and Butcher body slams Penta through the announce table. And Penta is carried out by some officials. So basically it ends up just being Phoenix and Archer in the match. So it's a handicap match before it even really starts. Finally, they get into the ring. The Kingston family gets the heat on Phoenix, and then Phoenix hits a desperation. This is the weirdest thing to say. Hits a desperation lethal injection on Kingston. It's like the lethal injection is such a like intricate move with a bunch of moving parts. I don't know how you can desperation hit it, but he did.
Yeah, lethal injection out of nowhere.
They have to, once Kingston is down, basically they have to go through each other to get to their respective corners. Archer gets the tag, and so does Blade. Archer just throws Blade around like he's a little kid. Butcher comes in, and Archer puts them in opposite corners, splashes both of them back and forth, and then crossbodies both of them at the same time. And we have the Kingston family starting to attack Archer's knee, starting to get the heat on Archer. Yes, that is what I said. They're getting the heat on the big man in this match. Jake Roberts gets involved. He grabs the leg of Blade when he was hitting the ropes. Phoenix gets tagged in and goes crazy, hitting everybody. Goes for a flip dive between the second and top rope onto Kingston. He comes up a bit short on his rotation and like smacked his head right on the ground. So he even crashed and burned a little bit. He gets back into the ring where Butcher and Blade hit a neck breaker powerbomb combo and get the victory. After the match, though, Archer comes in and attacks when they're getting their hands raised. Butcher gets taken out. Then Kingston runs off, and then he goes to do the blackout to Blade. Butcher grabs Blade's leg and pulls him down and saves him. And they all go running. So I thought this match was pretty fun. Me being the the old hat with wrestling, could have sworn Pentagon was going to be coming back out as, you know, the heroic throw the trainer aside, screw the ambulance, I'm gonna go help my guys, but he did not.
Yeah, totally. And also, let me just throw this out there, kind of a slightly different question. I might have missed something here because I missed one episode of Dynamite I missed, and it must have been the correct episode. Where's Pac? What happened?
Assuming he headed back.
Busy?
I'm assuming he headed
why
back
is Lance Archer here?
Yeah.
Okay. I was confused about why Lance Archer was in this match in the first place.
Yeah,
like
so
they
Lance
announced
Archer
it earlier in the episode. I think they did a little bit of a preview card on what was to come, and it said Lance Archer with the Lucha Bros, and like out loud was like, "What?"
Yeah, that came out of. So I'm guessing you saw last week, so it was probably the week before that you didn't see.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so Thanksgiving week, the Thanksgiving show.
Yes, that's the one I did not see.
Yeah, Lance Archer has had problems with Eddie Kingston, so Lance Archer came out and attacked Kingston after one of his matches, and that is how this got set up, and they never really said where Pac was. I'm assuming he's back in England through or back to the UK through the holidays, because that would make sense, because he'd still be in quarantine as of today. So he's probably just getting out of quarantine in like 2 days, and then he'll be able to spend the holidays with the family, and he'll be back at the beginning of the year. That's what I'm guessing real life wise. They didn't really say why he was actually not there.
Okay, that makes sense.
We have a quick backstage. They cut back, and Red Velvet is getting beaten up by Jade Cargill and Nyla Rose. And then we have Serena Deeb running in, Eva Lise as well, Big Swole, Diamante, and there's just a bit of a cat fight, and then they cut away. And that was about it.
Yeah, actually, I know I said earlier that the worst thing on the show was just kind of neutral, but actually this was definitely, in my opinion, the worst thing on the show. It just like didn't do anything for me. I was super confused about, like, it just seemed like a lot of the players in the women's division were just back there getting all brawly. I think it was just really to serve as, hey, here's Jade. Don't forget she's with, Vicky Guerrero and Nyla Rose, and they're all together, I guess. It was just kind of stupid, but it also only lasted like 35 seconds. So it definitely didn't, it wasn't like, oh man, that ruined the show for me. But I also just kind of thought it was kind of dumb. And they also had a cameraman, just from kayfabe. They had a cameraman just sitting there watching this woman about to be destroyed. And I'm like, what are you just doing? You're just standing there filming it. There's no like, hey, let's get someone to stop whatever's going on back here.
Well, it's like being a wildlife photographer. You can't get involved when the tiger is chasing down the antelope for food. That's just the way it goes. Yeah, this segment, it totally didn't work because it set up a match that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because the match that got set up is Ivelisse and Diamante against Serena Deeb and Big Swole. Why isn't it like Serena Deeb and Red Velvet against Jade and Nyla? Wouldn't that make the most sense out of this?
I just didn't understand any of this. Hey, can I ask you something real quick? I'm just kind of thinking this. Does it kind of feel like AEW has two women's divisions and one is really good and one is really dumb? Like the one that has Serena Deeb, Thunder Rosa, Layla Hirsch, like that whole section, that basically the NWA title scene or picture. I'm so happy with that. Every time I see one of the matches, I'm so glad. And then anytime I see like Jade, Nyla, Red Velvet, I'm just like, oh, this is the, or even like Abadon later. I was just like, this is just the other one that's not as good.
Yes, that's how I feel. Like there's a huge gap between like the top ladies and the rest of the ladies. Yeah, because definitely at the top you have sitting, Serena Deeb, Ivelisse, Diamante, Hikaru Shida, Thunder Rosa, Chris Statlander, even though she's out. And then you have like Red Velvet and Jade, who we haven't even seen her wrestle, but she's only been wrestling for like less than a year. We haven't seen a ton of Abadon, so I'll hold on that. I don't know how good she is or not. But yeah, there's just like a huge gap. There's like no middle ground. I guess Penelope is the middle ground at the moment. She like goes up and down.
Yes, that's a great point.
Next up, we have Abadon against Tesha Price, I guess it was. I think.
Yeah, I think it was Tasha Price. I think she lost a match on Dark last week.
Okay, well, she's going to lose a match here, too, because Abadon basically destroyed her and beat her up some more after the match. Shida comes out with a kendo stick and is a little hesitant to get in the ring, but she does. She clocks Abadon in the head with the kendo stick, grabs Tesha to get her out of the ring. Abadon does the Undertaker sit-up, and Shida and Price are a little freaked out and while getting out of the ring. Here we still have Shida, who has beaten Abadon before. She needs to go more the perplexed and the less scared.
Right. I agree with that, and actually really wholeheartedly agreed with what you just said up until about 2 hours ago when I was scrolling through Twitter and saw a comment made to Shida that said, hey, you've beaten Abadon before. What's with this? And her response actually kind of struck a chord with me. She said, yeah, if you survive an encounter with an alligator, you're not real keen to go see another one. And I was like, that's fair. Like, if you had an alligator attack you and you survived, you're probably not going to go like, oh, well, I'm not scared of them anymore.
True. I guess that's something. But yeah, I think she needs to act a little more perplexed than scared, because it's making her come out looking way too weak, and she should be more of a badass.
Yeah, well, I mean, she domed her with that kendo stick. Yeah, so, I mean, she looked pretty good there.
That was better, yes. But that was about it. Abadon just destroyed her, and that was all she wrote. She didn't use the well, I guess it's technically it's the pimp juice. Oh no, it's not the pimp juice. That's different. That's the kneeling DDT. She uses the opponent kneeling, and then she hits like the Rana faceplant. She didn't use it in this one. Has she used it in any of her other matches if you've seen them?
I don't think so.
Because that's a cool finisher. I could
totally be wrong. Yeah, it is. It really is. But I don't think so.
Yeah, next up we have just a really short backstage with Jericho. Basically he says that you see the solidarity in the inner circle, and they're going to be ringside for MJF's match tonight. That was basically it.
Yep.
Kenny Omega arrives in a helicopter with Don Callis. Marvez tries to get a word. Callis ushers him away, and Spellcheck keeps rechanging Callis to Cal-us. Cal-is. Omega enters via the left-hand tunnel, so coming out of the heel tunnel. Tony asks about the gentleman's agreement in the ring, and he says he's never been so disgusted in my life after seeing what happened last week, and he's been in wrestling since 1982 or whatever he said. Dawn grabs the mic and says, Tony, you're upset. Tony Khan is also upset. Tony Khan, you invited me. Welcome to wrestling, kid. And basically says people have been calling it the biggest screw job since Montreal. Says that they've been cooking this up for years. And Callis says that basically a rehash of what they said on Impact, though we didn't really cover it. Basically he says that, he's known Tony for 27 years, known Kenny for 27 years since he was 10 years old, and says that he's responsible for the match in the Tokyo Dome between Omega and Jericho, and because of that, he is one of the people responsible for creating AEW. Omega says that he didn't go to Tony at the beginning of AEW and beg for jobs for his friends and family, and says that they have been planning and biding their time, and it's because they needed everybody to buy into it, including Jon Moxley. And last week was just the beginning. We have a whole lot of things in store. Don Callis cuts him off, says they can't handle it, and but you can do the thing. And Kenny says that he's scared, sarcastically, of course. Then he says, I must bid you adieu, goodbye, mwah, and good night, bang. Paraphrased, of course.
Yes, paraphrased. So you're correct. I know we didn't cover much of Impact, but it was very much a lot of the same. I actually was a little disappointed by that because I did seek out that part of Impact. I didn't watch all of Impact, but
basically they basically did what was on Impact. That was 11 minutes on Impact. Here they did it better and in 5 minutes.
Correct. So I totally agree. It was a shortened version. Although they did kind of make Kenny feel like an even bigger deal on Impact, though, because they had like people waiting outside the trailer to talk to Don Callis, and instead they were, only there to really interview Kenny, which I thought was really neat. And they also did the on Impact, that is, they did the changing of the nameplate on the AEW Championship, which, it actually really is. I know this is all kayfabe and stuff, but in my mind, I'm like, man, that's kind of interesting that they would let the working relationship they have must be really good. Let's say that, because they are changing nameplates. They're proudly displaying this AEW Championship belt on Impact Television. So I did watch that, and I did think it was better done here on Dynamite, but the promo was very much the same, and it kind of made me disappointed because I wish that they were really betting on people going and finding Impact. I heard Impact did a great number, so huge props to them for this angle. But yeah, overall, I just thought this was really good. I really enjoyed Don Callis and the Kenny Omega pairing is very cool. And I'm really just excited to see where this goes. This was another thing, one of many things on this show specifically that left me wanting a little bit more. And I like when they do that. I like when I'm, really kind of interested, kind of in hooks in, let's say. And I really felt like this episode of Dynamite, I'm not trying to wrap up or anything, but this episode of Dynamite had a lot of different segments, at least 3 or 4 segments that kind of provided the hooks, Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely drawn into this story and am interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, so Impact definitely did do a better number. It looks like between the live viewers on Twitch, which was somewhere around 50,000, and then they had 50,000 on cable. So it was about 100,000 people watching, which normally on Twitch it's like 2,000 to 5,000 who are usually watching. So just in the Twitch, it was up, like 10 times what it normally is or more. But even then, I turned it on and I realized they were just going to string us along till the end. So I turned it off after about a half an hour and just watched the clip in the morning.
Right.
So I'm not sure, because there was things that already pissed me off when I started watching. I'm like, one of the first segments was invisible camera with the horrendous acting. I'm like, really? This is what you're going to put on in front of AEW fans? It's like, oh, that is not going to work.
Right.
So, yeah, that was
I also,
rough.
just as a little bit of an aside, I actually really enjoyed on Impact the interplay between Kenny Omega and Josh Matthews. Really cracked me up when he was like, Ambrose, right? He's like, Tough Enough season 1, and that got another good chuckle out of me, actually.
I do have to say, there's one thing that Josh Matthews said. No. It was actually Madison Rayne talking about how on Cameo, wait, are you the one who keeps asking for nude videos? Which I thought is the most hilarious inside joke ever.
I don't know if I get that one.
Josh Matthews is married to Madison Rayne in real life.
I did not know that was his wife. That's hilarious.
Anyhow, we're going to see how this goes. Basically, it sounds like they didn't really apply it to either. They didn't say it or I didn't write it down. It just didn't click in my head. Basically, Kenny wants to go on kind of this belt collector run and, get belts from various promotions. So I would not be surprised if we see Kenny Omega challenging for the Impact World title at some point as well, and possibly even grabbing it.
That's an interesting one, because from, I think, the average viewer's outside perspective, you're thinking, yeah, absolutely, Kenny Omega is going to destroy anybody in Impact. But at the same time, a company like Impact does have to think about its own interest. And you're not going to just have a guy from another company come in and immediately just take out your top guy. So, like I said, very interesting. And that's kind of what makes this storyline a little hot for me, is to see how is this actually all going to play out? Because it's clear that the working relationship is very strong, especially if they're going to do this kind of angle. But, for the future of Impact, you don't want to bring in Eric Young or have, Sami Callihan, or I'm just trying to name some of the top guys over there. You don't want to just have them get absolutely knocked around by a guy you just brought in from a totally different company.
Right. And keep a pin in that one. I'm going to just Sami Callihan. We'll get back to that. But then just even tacking on to this whole thing, we didn't even mention that on Impact, there was Tony Khan bought a advertisement spot, kayfabe obviously, that he and Tony Schiavone were basically talking about, everything that was going on. Tony said, I'm kind of mad at Kenny for what he did. We could have done something and worked whatever out. And he also said, I'm thinking about investing in Nashville. I have some holdings in the area. And he says, there's even rumors that I might buy Impact. That was another thing that was brought up on Impact, this time by Tony Khan. So a little interesting there. And even we talked, myself and Trey last week, would it make sense for Tony just to buy Impact off of Anthem?
Wow. That you had me speechless there for a second. I hadn't actually thought of that at all. But and then what? Keep it going as kind of a second company?
Yeah.
Huh. That's a pretty good idea. I kind of like that. But it's a good question, because you could definitely elevate some of those guys. If that's the way they want to go, then it's definitely an idea that I hadn't really thought too much about. Just talking about the segment, though, I thought this was hilarious, and I really enjoyed Tony Khan, actually, of all people. I know he's not a regular on-screen personality, and that's one thing we like about him, is that he's not on screen all the time. But he did really well here. He made me chuckle. He
is actually a really hilarious guy. Whenever I've heard any of the podcasts that he's on, he's pretty much on AEW Unrestricted before every pay-per-view and whatnot. So he's always really funny, and even backstage, if he's doing those, well, obviously he isn't lately, but when they could have people in there, he was doing the post show scrums, and there was like this little kid who was always at like every single pay-per-view backstage, and he'd always give the little kid the first question of the night, so he could head home and go to bed.
Yeah, I do remember that, actually.
So those are always funny. But I mean, so that's one of the things. It's like, well, Tony Khan could buy Impact, and there could be a use for them if they maintain, even if they just stay on Axis and go on YouTube, they could treat Impact as AEW's version of NXT, and they could just call it AEW Impact, so they could keep the name there, but just call it AEW Impact and basically drop the rest of the history that goes along with Impact, or just call it something else. You could do that too. Use that as a developmental territory, and then remember, we still have a third hour that's coming to TNT at some point, or at least a Turner Network. So I'm not, who knows what they'll do with that.
Right. I don't think that, I mean, now that I think about it a little more, I'm not sure if they would outright buy them, but I definitely think that this relationship is going somewhere, and I'm really excited to find out where. But yeah, it is a possibility that I had not considered whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, he could snag it for a couple $1 million. It's not like he'd have to shell out a ton of money comparatively.
Right.
So you brought up Sami Callihan. That is a name that I have heard floated by a few people. That is the attacker of Jon Moxley.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I can get on board with that immediately. Let's have it, please.
And then at the very least, the attacker is from Impact. It is not. It is not.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. The other thing that I really wanted, but sounds like is not going to happen, was for it to be Kenta.
I really want it to be Kenta,
but I don't think it's going to be Kenta. So for it to be someone from AEW, or I'm sorry, from Impact, would actually totally make sense and really go along with the story here, that this is not just weeks in the making, but as Don Callis said, this is years in the making. And it really feels like this is a plan that was hatched by him and by Kenny, 3 years ago, really. So right. Pretty neat.
So it would make sense that Don Callis would hire the outside help to take out Jon Moxley.
Absolutely. Or even if it's the North and they want to come in and, be aligned with Callis and Omega, and they can take out the Young Bucks.
That is also a possibility too. Yeah. Next week they give us a rundown. It's going to be Cody Rhodes versus Angelico. Not sure how that plays out. I don't know why they would make that match. Hardy and Private Party versus Hangman, Silvers, and Reynolds. They had run-ins with during the Battle Royale, so that makes sense. Daniels and Kazarian against the Acclaim. We already talked about that. Ivelisse and Diamante versus Serena Deeb and Big Swole. Out of that cat fight, makes no sense why this is the match to come out of it, but okay. They also let us know that on December 23rd, Dynamite is going to be either at 10 p.m. or after the NBA game if it runs past 10 p.m. Did I say a.m.?
No, I don't. I think you said p.m.
Okay, 10 p.m. on the 23rd, or when the NBA game ends. So that is going to be just a little bit of a change. It's on the 23rd, and I think they'll probably have a replay over the weekend as well. December 30th, they are calling night one of Jericho's New Year's Bash, and January 6th will be night 2 of said bash. So curious how that's going to play out. And then there was one more match. There was one more match that was made. I wish I had looked it up before. What was it? There was a big match. It had to do with Eddie Kingston and the Lucha Bros. And
I don't remember seeing that.
Good
for you for remembering that. I forgot.
It wasn't on the. Oh man, Tommy Tiny Lister died.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
I didn't know that.
Random. Yeah, I just found out on Twitter a couple hours ago.
Okay. We will talk about this after this last match because it actually came out of the final match. That is why it was not on this rundown that they gave us because the match hadn't been made
yeah.
yet. Okay, so we have the final match of the evening is MJF accompanied to the ring by the Inner Circle versus Orange Cassidy, accompanied to the ring by Best Friends for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. MJF attacks Orange Cassidy right away. That is really the ref's fault because he rang the bell without even asking the wrestlers if they're ready.
Yes.
So it wasn't even attacking before the bell. He attacked after the bell rang. Is Bryce part of the Inner Circle? Because he just asked for the bell when Orange Cassidy's back was turned. He didn't even ask. Orange Cassidy turns a suplex into a stun dog millionaire. They fight on the apron. Orange Cassidy goes for an orange punch. MJF moves and he punches the ring post. This comes into play for the rest of the match. MJF puts Orange Cassidy's hand in his back pocket and gives him an apron bomb with his hand behind his back. Then he takes Orange Cassidy's hand and sticks his finger in the turnbuckle tensioner and bends them. He keeps working on the hand. MJF sends Orange Cassidy to the outside, and then distracts the ref so the Inner Circle can swarm and lay the boots to Orange Cassidy on the outside. Best Friends try to get involved, but afterwards, the Best Friends leave and go backstage. And I wrote down, I'm guessing they're going to find some friends, and that was the case because we have outcomes with the Best Friends, Top Flight, Varsity Blondes, Brandon Cutler, all coming out with the Best Friends. And I was just about to write it, and then JR said it. It's an impromptu lumberjack match. Orange Cassidy hits a drop kick and then a dive, goes up top, hits a crossbody, swinging DDT, back up top, diving DDT for a 2 count. MJF goes back to attacking the hand, and then Orange Cassidy tries for a roll-up, but he can't use both hands. He's like shaking out his hand because it hurts. MJF hits a shoulder breaker and then a power bomb. Not sure why Excalibur called the power bomb a Tiger Driver. It's for a 2 count. MJF hits a heat seeker, or goes for a heat seeker, but Orange Cassidy dumps him over the top rope, and then Orange Cassidy hits a springboard senton onto the entire Inner Circle. Orange Cassidy runs and makes his way to the other side of the ring to safety. Back into the ring, though, MJF does hit the heat seeker, but he puts his feet on the ropes, and the guys on the outside point it out. Then MJF calls for the bat from Jericho, and Jericho distracts the ref. So MJF tries the Eddie Guerrero take a bump spot and frame the other guy, and he's trying to get Orange Cassidy to take the bat, but Orange Cassidy just puts his hands in his pocket, and then MJF grabs the bat and stands up, and then Orange Cassidy does the flop right as the ref turns around and sees MJF holding the bat, and Orange Cassidy is laid out on the ground. He takes away the bat, and then my notes die. I can't remember. Do you have written down what happened after that?
I don't have it written down, but I have a rough summary in my mind.
Okay, go for it.
So essentially what happens here is the match comes to a conclusion with a little bit of outside interference here. So the bat spot happens. We get a little bit more back and forth. And eventually, in the end, Kip Sabian and Miro come out on stage, and they come running. Miro looks like a freight train in a Versace sweater. He comes down literally while the ref's back is turned, just lays Orange Cassidy out. Orange Cassidy takes one of these crazy flip bumps, just completely dead in the middle of the ring. Miro gets out before the ref turns around, and MJF, basically has to be dragged over to Orange Cassidy, but makes the cover for 1, 2, 3. The commentators all really make a big point that the ref cannot call what he doesn't see as a disqualification. However, you can tell that Bryce also sees Sabian and Miro knows something has transpired behind his back and actually counts a little slow, I thought, which was actually kind of a cute touch because he knows that there's been some sort of interference, but he just missed it while he was trying to deal with all the lumberjacks. Because there was a huge brawl. I don't know if I mentioned that. There was a huge brawl with everybody, which is what distracted Bryce in the first place. So, I mean, the Cutler and the Varsity Blondes and Best Friends are all out there brawling with the inner circle. And it really was a huge mishmash. So while Bryce was trying to break some of that up, Miro came out and laid out Orange Cassidy. So gets the 1, 2, 3. Mr. MJF retains the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Immediately begins to tell the camera, I won clean, which is so funny because the whole match was so overbooked and hilarious. But yeah, that's what happened there at the end. And then I know we'll probably talk about this, but actually after as well, the security forces all came out to try to get, because actually Trent gets up into the ring and then goes flying out of the ring and basically tries to drive Miro into the staging area, which I thought was really fun. It looked kind of shooty, like, not everyone was like, pause for a moment, now brawl. Like Trent just ran up and knocked into Miro. Miro destroys Trent. Miro begins to destroy all of the security guys coming out. Him and Sabian are, as soon as he puts his hands on the officials, Sabian's kind of like, hey, what are we doing? Miro picks one of them up and actually throws him off the stage. And the show goes off the air with Miro's foot on one of their heads, and he's got that crazy old Rusev look in his eyes.
Yeah, that ending was great. Usually mark like, oh, I got to go back and finish typing this up, but then I watched 5 more hours of New Japan Wrestling today, so I forgot to go back and get this last little piece until I just got to it. But yeah.
Well, actually, I will say, I thought, I'll give mine and then you can go ahead, but I thought that this was a really fun little ending. I think I've admitted to you before that I don't really mind some of these overbooked matches, especially because AEW tends to have some pretty clean finishes for the most part. I don't mind if they get a little shenanigansy, and I think this was just the right match to do it in. It was my favorite match, actually, of the night. It might not have been the best. Actually, it might have been the best, but it was just a lot of fun. MJF and Orange Cassidy are both pros. I know I spoke earlier about Orange Cassidy not really doing the shtick as much anymore, but I don't mind. I think that he is well within his right to change up the character, and they can do what they want because I just think he's talented even without the pockets thing. So yeah, really, really fun match. A lot of shenanigans in the end, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought this was a really fun match. Like you said, Orange Cassidy hasn't been doing as much of the shtick. He's obviously an extremely good wrestler, so that's why the shtick works, because he can pull it. Obviously, doing any of those moves with your hands in your pockets, I mean, right there, you got to be a little bit insane, but also you have to be really good to be able to have that type of body control without using your arms. Doing a kip up with your arms stuck in your pockets, I bet that's like
absolutely. Every time he kips up with that, I always give him a little bit of respect.
So yeah, I thought it was good. I'm kind of bummed it didn't go the way of the way Alvarez wanted it to go, because I thought that would be a much funnier storyline. But that's why. Do you hear his storyline idea?
No, I didn't hear it.
He wanted originally that it was going to be Kip Sabian to win the Diamond Ring and then give it to Penelope, not realizing, oh crap, I have to defend it next year, and then figuring out what he's going to do so he doesn't have to get a diamond ring back from Penelope.
You know what? I think I would have liked that too.
But yeah, this was a solid show. There was just a few down parts, but they were like 30-second blips, so it wasn't really a big deal. But we had tons of storylines moved forward. We had some decent wrestling. We had a couple squashes, but no big deal. They had I think they had a shoehorn in the Shaq thing because it was not advertised on last week's show. So I'm guessing it came up to them post filming even tonight's show, because tonight's show, or this week's show, was filmed last Thursday. So I think they had to shoehorn that in there, so I'm not sure what got bumped or if anything got moved around. But overall, the pacing of this show went by really, really fast.
Yeah, now that we've discussed the whole show, I'm starting to realize just how much happened. When you said that earlier, I was like, yeah, tons of stuff happened, but I wasn't really thinking about it. You are right. There were a lot of segments and a lot of things just happening. Very busy, but it didn't actually feel that bad. I think they did a really good job with their pacing.
Yeah, let's see. I'm at 16, 17, 18 segments of all types of different things. Usually there's 5 matches and maybe like 6 to 10 at most segments, and we're sitting here at 18 segments.
Right.
It's crazy. But yeah, a lot of things happen. One thing we might as well touch on it. The ratings have come in 995,000 for AEW, so just shy of the million mark, and that's the
just shy.
That is the biggest number that they have done since I don't know what, week 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah.
So doing good there. So, yeah, good to see. So the match that they have put up on Twitter that came out of the match that we were just talking about. So it's actually going to be a 14-man tag next week. It's going to be the Inner Circle. So Jericho, MJF, Sammy Guevara, Santana Ortiz, Jake Hager, and Wardlow versus Best Friends, so Trent and Chucky T, Top Flight, Varsity Blondes, and Brandon Cutler. Of course, it says in little tiny writing, AEW stars subject to change without notice. So just being in there just in case one of them can't make it, or if Santana is going to be sitting next week's tapings out as well. But probably not, but we will see.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was, like I said earlier, I thought it was a very good show. Definitely a lot of entertaining things happened. Some really good chuckles. Like I said, I found a lot of things that happened funny, even right at the end with MJF in the camera saying, "I won clean." Like,
right.
He's just so deluded. It just made me laugh. Overall, I thought it was a really, really good show. I thought that the nearly reaching a million is just another great milestone for these guys. If I remember correctly, I was reading on Twitter some of Alvarez's tweets about the ratings, that they were number 1, I think, with the key males 18 to 49, and they were actually number 2 on cable, period.
Yeah,
they were just the number 2 cable television show that day. It's really, really great. I'm so excited. I mean, as soon as AEW was announced a couple years ago, I was just immediately supportive, just to see what would happen with the wrestling business, and to see, you've heard the phrase say that the rising tide carries all ships. In hopes that and even if it wasn't going to be great, some competition is great for everyone. And I'm so excited to see them almost reach this million mark. So I can't wait to see how they go moving forward.
Yeah, and Trey and I were talking. This might be the year where Gato's Booker of the Year award does not get awarded to him for the 8 years in a row. So I think Booker of the Year might be going to Tony Khan this year.
I think it is. I think it is, and I think it should. I think it's well deserved. I think that I don't know if you remember, and I certainly don't want to gloat at all, but the last episode that you and I recorded, I predicted that we would see a title change during Winter is Coming. At the time, I don't even think Winter is Coming was the name, but I said that they may do a title change on TV. Have, right before the records reset, have Moxley take 1 loss, which, is what's played out here. And just that entire story throughout. I'm just going to put my focus there for a moment. The Kenny Omega story and the story really of Jon Moxley throughout 2020 has been incredible. It's just been everything makes sense. That's why I watch this product, because I know when I watch it, one, I'm not going to be disrespected for spending my time watching, and two, even if there are loose ends, oftentimes they're very minor, or at least they are explained away. And you really get rewarded for being a fan just to see how these storylines play out. So I think Tony Khan deserves it far and away. The best wrestling product I think we have had this year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to how they close out this year, closing out the year strong, whereas last year came a bit of a flop right at the end there. But they came back, they bounced back so nicely coming right into the new year. And then it's just amazing how well they have maintained through, whatever we're going to be calling the COVID era forever. That this is the weirdest thing to throw into a brand new promotion 6 months into when they start on TV. Oh yeah, we're going to have a global pandemic and you're not going to be able to have, you're not going to be able to tour and have fans. So strangest thing to happen. And AEW, I think, has made the most out of it. And has not only did they not lose, they have actually been gaining viewership. So good on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they are the biggest success story to come out of the COVID era for sure. I think that at first it seemed like the big success story was going to be cinematic matches and how people started adapting to those a bit more. But that can be put aside for now, because I definitely think that AEW, to be able to say that they almost hit 1 million and may yet still hit 1 million in 2020. It's just really incredible, especially when you think about wrestling not having any fans in attendance. Fans have been such a huge, or are such a huge part of this business and of this industry. When you, think about your favorite moments in wrestling, the fans' reaction is synonymous with those moments. And to do it with no fans and then with even limited fans, it's been really incredible to see that they can kind of carry the emotion, carry the storyline without having 15,000 people in attendance. So I think it's absolutely to their credit, and I don't want to sound like a shill, but I am really, really happy for their success thus far.
I still have my tickets for April 21st. I'm sure that's going to get pushed again, but I still got tickets. I'm going to go when they come.
You still got it.
I still got it. I already paid for them, so I might as well. All right. So anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up this week?
No, nothing that pops into my head. Just wanted to say glad to be back on That's Wrestling. I will start posting on Twitter more. And for all of you who are into video games, hope you are enjoying Cyberpunk 2077. I will be starting it pretty soon.
Yeah, it's funny. I play like 0 AAA titles.
Okay.
I am very much the indie gamer type of guy, so I'll be playing Fall Guys tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. I'm waiting on my Google Stadia to arrive so I can play myself some Cyberpunk.
All right. I did mention at the beginning of the New Japan show that I just did with Trey, but unfortunately, a little sad news. Our buddy Daryl, he is currently in the hospital. He is not doing quite well. He had a few actually mini strokes, and they also have found a hole in his heart. So he is in the hospital right now. He has posted this all over Facebook publicly. So this is not, I am not speaking out of turn here. So we just want to send him some well wishes, and hopefully everything turns out okay. I don't know when surgery is going to be happening, because he doesn't know either and hasn't posted anything on an update on that, but hopefully he gets better soon. I don't know anything else beyond that, really, but he is in the hospital, and it's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, that is a bit of a bummer. When I heard from you that that had happened, my heart definitely goes out to them. to our friends up there. So Daryl, honestly, we had quite a fun time on the roundtable we had, and actually really appreciated a lot of his takes. That's the one time I've really had a lot of interaction with him. But I'm sending prayers and good things his way, because terrible thing.
All right, so thanks everybody for watching That's Wrestling. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, you can send those to Eric at that'swrestling.com, or leave a comment down below in the YouTube comments. And you can come hang out with us on Discord. Link is in the show notes in the description. If you're listening to this as a podcast, head over to the YouTube channel, because we do this show live, so you can come hang out and chat in the chat room if you want. If you have any questions, we can address them at that time. Also, I believe Trey and we talked post the New Japan show. It looks like we're probably going to be covering the finals plus the Super J Cup on Monday, because the finals, the show actually starts in 4 hours from now, and then the Super J Cup will be airing on Saturday night, so we'll probably be covering it Monday evening, so be sure to check out for that. We will hopefully be back to a normal schedule next week for AEW. Yes, Caleb?
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to muffle a yawn.
No,
it's about midnight, so I'm toast.
Will we be back on our normal schedule next week?
Yes, we absolutely will be.
Okay, cool. And head over to your favorite podcast app of choice and give us a review. It really helps out. And follow us on Twitter. That's Wrestling1. So for Caleb Johnson, my name is Eric Loach, and you've been watching and listening to That's Wrestling. See you later, guys.